It's been a while since I've done a head-to-head, so I thought that this time I might concentrate on some riding kit rather than the bikes themselves. I know it can be confusing, especially for newbies, when you walk into a big accessory store and check all the helmets on display and see how expensive they are, and then you start to worry that you might possibly be going to make a costly wrong decision. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to try and explain the main differences between the major types of helmet that you might consider buying for whatever road bike you happen to have. Okay, the differing helmets include open face helmets, either what is referred to as a half helmet or a three-quarter design. I don't have one here at the moment. Then there's modular or flip-up helmets, as you might know them. And then you've got full-face helmets, and these are either dedicated for road use or can also be used for racing. I'll get into that more in a moment. To start, and I'm going to be intentionally dismissive of these because unless you're just nipping out on your scooter to the shop around the corner and it's 40 degrees Celsius out there, open face helmets are a no-no. In fact, even if it's a heat wave and you're going less than a kilometre, I'd recommend using a full face lid of some description. The main reason for that is because the studies I've seen over the years and my own, unfortunately extensive crashing experience, suggest that at least 50% of accidents involve some kind of damage to the chin bar area of a helmet. No chin bar, then you'll have no chin. Seriously, face planting the road at anything quicker than walking pace is going to result in some pretty horrific injuries, up to and including death, when a full face lid might well have saved you completely. A half helmet is for people with half a brain. It only covers the top of your head like an upturned pudding bowl, and should therefore only be worn if you are in fact a pudding. The three-quarter helmet covers a bit more down the back of your head, but still leaves your face having an argument with the road. Yes, they allow a lot of airflow and keep you relatively cool, but if you intend doing any serious speeds, then understand that the wind itself will be hugely uncomfortable. Any bugs that hit you in the face will hurt a lot. And don't even think about those rocks that get thrown up occasionally and crack your car's windscreen. You might not believe this, but if you happen to get caught as well riding in the rain, that will also hurt enough to make you cry, probably. Open face helmets are, well, they're stupid. If you are also stupid, then go right ahead. Modular helmets, like this, these offer the best of both worlds. Some, like the Shark flip-up lid that I use, have been certified both as an open face helmet and as a full face one. I trust that the chin bar, this area on the best modular helmets, will do the job in the event of an accident, but there's no denying that the mechanism is its weak point, and there, I suppose, then is always the possibility of a failure. As you can see, it moves, pivots around here, and there's always the possibility you could rip that chin bar off. This Ulfstone helmet that I have here hasn't, I don't think, been certified by CE or DOT or whatever, or at least it shouldn't have been, because it has all the build quality of a Mozambican tin shack after a hurricane has ripped through it. That aside, you can still see that at lower speeds or when stopped, being able to flip up the front is great for ventilation and means you don't need to take your helmet off completely to grab a drink or make a phone call or have a cigarette or whatever it is you want to do. The downside is that as soon as the speed goes up, this is going to act as a huge air brake and force your head backwards, unless of course you have one of those models like the Evoline Shark helmet that I don't have with me at the moment. That's the one I use, and there the chin bar goes all the way around to the rear and ends up in a kind of streamline position. Because of the mechanism, this whole contraption that allows you to move the chin bar out of the way, these flip-up helmets tend to be heavier than the usual full face helmets. That might be all right for shorter rides, but if you're touring, for instance, and you're going to be wearing the helmet all day, then you will definitely feel the extra weight in terms of aches and pains in your neck and shoulders by the end of a long day in the seat. Given the need to make room for the gubbins that allows the contraption for the movement of the chin bar, the shell of the helmet is often larger as well, which some people don't like the look of. And as an added negative, in a lot of cases the helmet is both noisier and less padded in certain areas because the space for your luxurious cushioning and windproofing has gone to the mechanics of letting you flip the chin bar out of the way. I like flip-ups, but I usually only use one if I know I'm spending my time in and around the city. When in South Africa and I know I'm going to be blasting around Joburg for the day with multiple stops, it's the perfect lid. But if I know I'm heading out for a longer trip with higher speeds and fewer stops, then I always opt for a genuine full-face lid. There's simply no arguing that they are the ultimate for safety, for the simple fact that the one-piece construction includes the chin bar and means you have maximum strength in all areas. Within full-face helmets, we have models that might be considered touring or sport touring sort of thing, like this Spartan GT, and then there's the race style helmets that will pass an inspection by your relevant racing body, who will then allow you on the circuit to compete. This helmet, by the way, the Spartan GT, I'd be more than happy to use at a track, on a track day for instance, but I'd rather use this one if possible. They may look essentially identical in terms of their overall form factors, but there's a few details that do differ. On the track, what matters, I was going to say most, but what is seriously important is ventilation, because going as quickly as possible involves a lot of sweaty effort. Given the amount of forces you encounter on a fast lap, from the wind blast to the braking to the acceleration to the amount a pro rider is actually moving around on the bike, weight is obviously a huge consideration. Ideally, the less of it, the better. So you'll often pay more for less, literally. The weight is saved through the use of expensive materials, generally like carbon fibre or Kevlar. Comfort is not that much of an issue for a racer. Obviously, it shouldn't be uncomfortable, but generally a racer isn't going to be in his lid for much more than 45 minutes at a time. Consequently, there's usually significantly less plush padding inside. Don't get me wrong though, there's still plenty of nice padding going on. It's more designed to make sure the helmet doesn't move around on your bonds at all, especially in the much more likely event of a crash while you're racing. With this type of padding and the emphasis on ventilation and lightweight, race helmets are usually noisier than road helmets. Most racers use earplugs anyway, and you should too on the road, by the way. So noise really isn't a consideration when designing a helmet for the track. Aerodynamics are important though, not just as I mentioned for the ventilation, of which there is a lot on a racing helmet, but also streamlining. That's the name of the game, and reducing any potential wind buffeting. That can move your head around, and that's not what you want at 200 miles an hour coming up to the next hairpin. So this helmet, for instance, can actually be bought with a massive but light extra extension at the back that Shark says helps its MotoGP riders gain about 4 or 5 kilometers, I think it was, at the end of Mugello's main straight. It's the sort of thing you'll see on a lot of the top racing lids these days, irrespective of the brand. The visors, well, they tend to be a little bit thicker for safety, and they will feature a quick release visor system that makes changing them an absolute doddle. Important if you're on the grid and it goes from sunshine to dark clouds in an instant. Oh, and also they might have little protrusions on the visor so that you can fit some tear-offs. The road versions of the full face helmet, well, they look pretty much identical, but weight is just a little bit less critical, and long distance comfort is more important, as is reducing wind noise. You'll also frequently see these lids sport 2 visors instead of just the one. And it's actually, I think, one of the best innovations of recent years for road riding. Yes, the interior dark visor is very cool and fulfills all of our inner child's fighter pilot fantasies, but it's also very, very practical. Riding from bright conditions into heavy shade, perhaps into a tunnel of trees, you can flip the visor up on your race helmet, which would be like so, but you'll need to slow down because the wind blast just makes it uncomfortable. On the road helmet, you can flip up the interior visor and you still have the clear visor on the outside to keep the wind off your face. And, of course, and most of the experienced bikers out there will have encountered this many, many times, if you start a ride in the day but only get home in the night, you'll end up riding home with your visor open because your super cool dark visor it's like riding blindfold. Never a good idea. Not a problem though if you're wearing one of these. The structure of the two helmets may also differ slightly around the chin area and how the helmet sits on your head. Racers tend to look out when they're properly tucked in, something a road rider never does. So they wear their lids higher on their heads so they can get a clear view, if that makes sense. And although it seems to be changing these days, race helmets, as a consequence, often have a slightly smaller, narrower chin bar because the chin is literally on the tank and would otherwise get in the way. With the more upright riding position of most road bikes, the helmet can sit lower on your head, and often the knock-on effect is that you get a deeper chin bar on a road helmet. And so to finish off, let's take a look at the one helmet I haven't mentioned so far, and that's adventure helmets. Here's my old Shoei that is well, it's a good few years old now, but it's still a very good helmet. As you can see, it looks like a motocrosser's lid, almost. Biggest difference is the peak and, again, the smaller chin bar that stands further away from the rider's face. This is mainly to aid ventilation. Riding off-road can be a very physically challenging business, especially if you have to pick your bike up several times an hour like I do. So you need as much airflow as possible. For that reason, the padding, well, that is also often quite minimalistic compared to a road helmet, but it's not as bad or as sparse in there as a motocross lid because you can't totally comprise the fact that you need to cover some long distances. Adventure riding, as I'm sure you're well aware, is also a dirty business, and often worse, it's dusty. So you might find it's very easy to remove this visor, so you can just use goggles instead. They can form a perfect seal then with your face to protect your eyes from all that dust. If you see some studs or other odd looking bits on the side or rear of the helmet, then they're probably there to fasten a set of goggles to. The peak is very handy for keeping the sun out of your eyes, obviously, but equally obviously it can be something of a hindrance at higher speeds. It should be easily removable for that reason. Get the wind under there like a flip-up helmet and it tends to just try and break your neck for you. If you have a big adventure bike though, with a decent or adjustable screen, the peak might not be such a wind resistance issue. They're not really much use for pure road riding for that reason, apart from making you look like an adventure-y sort of bloke when you walk into the pub, and then a bit of an idiot if you happen to leave and get on your cruiser. So unless you're doing any proper adventure riding, I really wouldn't bother. But if you're going off-road, then it will be worth checking out that if you wear body armour or a neck brace, that your helmet can be integrated with that system as smoothly as possible. Well, that's it. I hope this has given you a bit of a better understanding of which type of helmet you should consider when you next head into a store with a wallet full of cash.